them quite often because guess what? They wrote the syllabus and they also wrote the exam. So do you think it's pretty important to follow that syllabus? Let me show you something. Here we go. Here is your syllabus. I think we included that in an email. Oh, let me share this properly so that you can see it nice and clear. I think that'll do it. Hopefully that's good. Now let me do a different way. They are the ones who wrote the syllabus, and therefore they are also the ones who write the exam. So they're basically telling you what's on the exam, right? It's just a matter of cultivating that material down to the stuff that's actually going to be those test questions. And I'll try to help you with that as best I can. I'll give you some insight about how test questions are written, and I'll frequently say things like, this is a FYI kind of item. This is the kind of thing that could show up on the test. I haven't had to take that test in 26 years. And so it's a lot different than it was back then. And it's longer. The course is longer, for one thing. I got my license in 1996, and it was a 45-hour, not a 75-hour course. There we go. That's what I want. And, but when I started teaching 5 years ago, I pretty much had to start from scratch, and I've read that book, guys. I've been where you are. I've had to digest that book really fast so I could teach the material. They kind of threw me in the deep end, and I was teaching these courses. Sometimes I would get up at like 2 a.m. to prepare for teaching a class that I was taking over for somebody, but it really helped me understand how to get this material wedged into the brain. And everybody learns differently. So that's part of your initial task, is figuring out how best you learn. Sorry. Let's go with that for now. So we'll talk about those different ways. Some people are visual learners. Some people need to write things down. That's why it's probably a pretty good idea to keep a physical notebook. Keep an actual physical notebook. Keep an actual physical notebook close at hand, and I'll frequently say, write this in your notes. This is a very testable item. That's another key phrase I'll use. So with that said, let's get to know your expectations and your feelings about this in an anonymous fashion. I'm going to use this method of quizzing you from time to time, and it's available through Zoom. And it's basically a Zoom poll session, sort of a Zoom poll quiz. And I just launched it. So I'm going to give you a moment. Hopefully that came up on your screen. Let me know if it did not. You got that? Or just give me a thumbs up if you do see the poll window pop up. Okay, good. If you didn't, sometimes there's little glitches, but we're going to review it. I'm going to give you a few minutes where I'm actually going to stay quiet, let you go through these 6 questions. And then we will see what all the answers are, but they don't reveal your identity. These are anonymous answers, so feel comfortable about that. And we'll just kind of see what we're working with. 2. And we'll go down through together. So, what do we have? What's your biggest concern about the course? You know, guys, been teaching this long enough to know that there's kind of a top 3. Either people are math phobic, or they don't do well on tests in general. They probably know the material, but the test taking freaks them out. Or the volume of material to accomplish amongst your normal life is enormous. It's a big endeavor, and that's exactly what I've expected here. Yeah, about a third of you for each of those things. Some of you have math issues, and that's normal. I did too. Still do, somewhat. Been teaching this course long enough to realize what it kind of boils down to. All the math kind of boils down to the same 1 or 2 types of things. So I'll give you that insight when we get around to it that should help you kind of alleviate your fear a little bit. I use a couple techniques, couple of visual aids to help you understand what to do with the various pieces of information and know what calculations to make. And there's a fair number of math problems on the test. The Relink book that I'm going to go through with you here in a moment that Jason alluded to shows you how many questions come from which various topics on the exam. So we'll talk about that in a moment. Test taking anxiety, I totally get it. I had a recent student send me an update, and he texted, I passed on the first try. So I was thrilled to hear it. Not everybody does that. In fact, quite a few people don't do that. Because of these things, I think the biggest one for a lot of people, as we see here by a little bit, is fitting in the required study time. Because sitting through the class is not enough. If all you have time for is to sit through the class, it's not going to work out. You're going to have to commit. And that means you're going to have a team meeting with all those people that are in your life that have to love you, that you live with, the people that love you unconditionally, that have a vested interest in your success. And you're going to have to let them know, look, guys, I did this thing. I'm in the middle of this thing now. I need your help. Don't come to me for all the things you normally come to me for, because I need some time. I need quite a bit of time for this little season of life, these next 10, 11 weeks. You might have to lie to people. I'm just kidding. But you might have to come back from Target an hour later than you really got finished. Sit in that parking lot and study for an hour if you can get away with it. You're going to need to find these little pockets of time. Get up earlier, go to bed later, go to do this during lunch, whatever little moments. And I promise you, the little 5, 15, 20, 30-minute bits, they come in handy. They're useful. I like to teach, and I still primarily do real estate brokerage, listing and selling. That's still my main thing. But the teaching is a nice, enjoyable side project of mine. I also like to learn guitar, for one thing. That's sort of my lottery winning plan. If I won the lottery and I could just do whatever I want all day, every day, I'd probably get really good at that. And so I do what I can, spend the time I can. So I try to learn how to play that, how to understand music theory. And what I've found is, this has a point, by the way, I'm getting around to it. What I've found is even 5 to 10 minutes a day with hands on the guitar and really thinking it through and just doing a little bit, it's amazing that mind-body connection. The next day, that thing I worked on the day before is a little easier. And that applies to everything. So it could be that you're going through flashcards that you've made of the vocabulary terms. I know that sounds like middle school, high school stuff, but it works. And it's important because some of these questions on the test are just straight up definitions. Basically, what's the meaning of this term? Pick one of the following. The test, by the way, is multiple choice. Four possible multiple choice answers. Pick the best answer. It's not none of this crazy Roman numeral 1 is this, Roman numeral 2 is this, and which is it? All of them, 1 only, 2 only, both or neither. It's none of that anymore. They took all that out, just straight up. A, B, C, or D. Which one is the best answer? And so I'll talk to you a lot along the way about how to navigate a test question and go through those answer choices. For one thing, you can probably weed out at least one, if not two, of the four answer choices because of what you do know. And then the ones that get a little tough for you, you can still probably weed them out, at least down to a 50-50 chance. So we'll learn more about some test taking skills and tips and tricks to help alleviate that. But definitely reach out to me with any specific concerns. I'll give you my contact info, texting, emailing. This other thing I'm going to show you, this class, virtual classroom called Notion I've set up for you that we'll talk about in a moment too. What sort of real estate experience do you have, if any? Let's see what you guys are working with. We have a few homeowners. We've got two people that have been in the business in another state. Got a handful, as always, of people who've always rented. And we also have a handful of people with the HGTV PhD. Welcome. It's all lies. It's fun entertainment, but boy, oh boy, I can't even watch it. Sometimes I'm like, really? You're celebrating because you got a listing? Well, okay, good for you, but you're not paid yet. This is 100% commission. That listing is nice, but that just means you have a lot of work to do right now between now and getting paid. Maybe that's the voice of 26 years of jaded veteran experience, getting kicked in the face from time to time when listings or sales might fall apart when you were kind of counting the money. But yeah, good point that brings up. Obviously, don't count on that for learning anything, but you're also going to probably have some friends, maybe family who have licenses, who are in the business, and they might give you some free advice about how to succeed in this course. Be really careful about their advice. I find more often than not that a working broker has no idea how to pass the test. They did it once, but they're probably going to confuse you with like real day-to-day stuff that you do in the business, in the wild, that doesn't help you in passing the test to even get to that point. So just be careful. If you ever hear advice from someone like that, run it by me. I'm happy to tell you if it's just something that's not going to be helpful, but I'd rather that than you go down a path because somebody just randomly made a comment or made a suggestion that's just not going to be useful. And with that said too, Jason alluded to other resources. Feel free to Google, right? Go there, YouTube search, Google search, real estate in North Carolina, how to pass the test. But again, be careful because the thing I'm going to be teaching you is straight from the Real Estate Commission. And I've seen some of that stuff. I used it 5 years ago when I was trying to get up to speed so fast to teach these courses. There's a couple of resources online that I would listen to, and from time to time, they said things that were wrong. I was watching one just the other day, and he said something wrong, and it's out there, but you have to pick and choose and be careful. If it's ever something that conflicts with what we say here in the class, again, run it by me. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'll at least get to the bottom of it and help you figure out the right answer. So just be careful, proceed with caution. Are you prepared to spend a significant amount of time studying? Yeah, that's sort of a brainwash question. Just want to get you all in that mental space because it is going to take a lot of work. I will tell you that. It's not just a scare tactic. I'm not kidding. Jason's example of his own experience is a great one. People underestimate this course all the time. Another question I'll ask people sometimes is, why are you taking this course? And some people take it because they had a great experience with a wonderful agent and they want to do that too. But some people are taking it because they had a pretty bad experience with a lousy agent. And they thought, well, if that turkey could get in the business, surely I could do it. And while that turkey did get in the business, and they might indeed be a turkey and have done you wrong, and maybe even be an idiot, they did manage to pass the test somehow. And, you know, blind squirrels finding nuts. You ever heard that phrase? I'll let you look that one up. What is your most effective personal learning style? That's another valuable thing. That's probably something I would kind of give you as an informal, unofficial assignment these first couple weeks. Figure it out. As you're going through the information, think about it. What is it that when you're really trying to retain something, you ever driven down the road and then the GPS is talking to you and you're trying to follow the GPS and you turn your radio down so that you can follow the GPS better? Not so you can hear it better, just so you can concentrate. That's a real thing. Your brain needs to focus on something in that moment. And so it's telling your hand, hey, turn this thing down. Stop listening to that music for a minute. Focus on this task. So figure out and just think, what is it that I do when I really want to learn something? Do I tend to write it out, like sketch it out on paper? Do I tend to look for videos online to explain a thing? Do I tend to prefer audiobooks if I want to listen to something that's maybe a motivational or business type topic? You more of a reader of an actual book that killed trees or an online book, or are you one who listens to a book? I've got some people, friends of mine, that say, yeah, I read 3 books last month. And I'm like, oh, cool. What were they? Well, they were audiobooks. And I listened, and I'm like, okay, well, there's a choice of words that you made. Yes, you took in the information, but reading the book versus listening to the book, it doesn't matter which it is. Some people are better at some than others, and it's all valid. So figure those things out, and I'll give you some ideas and ways to get this information in your brain using these various methods too. That's why I say also keep a notebook. Good old-fashioned notebook. Do you like my grandma pen? I showed this to some millennial buyers one time, broke this thing out to have them sign, and they're like, my grandma has a pen like that, and I felt like a grandma. But, they still make these things. They're pretty cool. Some kind of a writing implement, right? Write it down on real paper and then recap it. If you want to then put that into a Evernote or Notion or some sort of an online note taker, that works too. But you just need a way to get a good, quick note written down. I'll typically, if I'm listening to a seminar or am in person at a seminar, I'll kind of have a 2-column piece of paper, and one column is for notes for the thing that I'm learning, and another column is for all the things my mind wanders to that I might want to remember later, that it kind of maybe spurred an idea. So just something to jot down, something like, oh, I need to go back and study agency. This thing that we're studying now just reminded me I need to talk about or review dual agency or designated dual agency or contracts or when is the due diligence due, whatever, right? So just have a quick way to get that down. But if you use the online stuff, for one thing, you've got to get over to the window, navigate it through. You already have Zoom tying up your computer. It might take a little longer than just jotting down a quick note. Just a little friendly reminder there. So quite a few of you are visual. I am too. Writing down is good. And the test taking, that was my example. I wandered off the point. The past student recently that said he passed it on the first go. He said, I asked him, well, great, congratulations. Could you give some advice to other students? What would you say to them? And he said, take lots of practice exams. That's what he did, right? He went through the course. He also used a couple of resources that I suggested and took lots and lots of practice exams. Right now, they're not going to help you any because we haven't covered enough content. But somewhere around the middle part of the course, around when we do the midterm exam, that's when you should start seeking out and taking other and more and more practice exams. That's applying the content to the exam taking method. Because just navigating an exam question is a skill in and of itself. I wish we didn't have to do it this way. To give out real estate licenses, I kind of wish it was a little more like it is for appraisers. Appraisers have to take about 5 classes, but then they have to spend an entire year as an apprentice to another appraiser. We don't do it that way in real estate, but I think you learn a lot through the on-the-job training. More than you really learn in a classroom environment when your main focus is is it on the test? That's kind of the underlying question of everything we do right now. Between now and the last day, the final, you're always thinking, okay, which of this stuff is on the test? I'm going to try my best to give you the priority and make the priority that type of content, but you still need to know why you need to know these things. So it's sort of this all one big package deal, but I try to be as efficient and streamlined as I possibly can for you. Let's see. Are you familiar with group apps like GroupMe? Somebody in the chat had mentioned that, so I threw this back in there. And that's up to you. I will send you out the spreadsheet where you can choose to share your contact info if you want to. And then whomever you connect with in your groups, you can use whatever method you want to. So just keep that in mind. Decide amongst yourselves when you form your groups, how you want to communicate and stay in touch. There's lots of different options there. Oh, wow. Boy, oh boy. Princess Nevermind is second place. I shouldn't have put that one in there. Well, we'll see. Maybe it'll be a collage of all of them. Got a couple of Vaders. That was the first one that came to mind. Yoda. You know what? On that day, do you know, for some of you might be like, why are they talking about Star Wars? Some of you may not be as nerdy as some of the rest of us. May the 4th, you know why that's a thing, right? May the 4th be with you, just in case you don't know the tagline from the movie. You probably already know that. All right, I'm going to have to work on my Princess Yoda costume, I guess. Okay, let's talk about this course. There we go. Okay, that's me. And let me talk to you about, well, first of all, I guess I should tell you a little background. Been in the business since, again, 1996, fresh out of college, went to UNC Chapel Hill. They either said, you need to leave or you need to graduate. So I graduated. And when I got out, everybody either wanted more work experience or more school. So I talked to 2 family friends, and they both said, don't do real estate. And I said, well, I'm 23, and you said not to, so I'm going to do it. And so here we are. And you know what, guys? It has been challenging. It has been rewarding. Fast forward to 2001. My dad was a mechanic for 50 years. He's a big, tough guy, like that generation tends to be. Diesel mechanic, like big trucks and stuff, and dump trucks and bulldozers and just anything with a diesel engine that could kill you. He would do it. That was him. That was his life and his job. And we thought it was sort of a sinus infection. He just couldn't shake it. Finally, he was also a guy who never went to the doctor. Mom finally nagged him to go to the doctor. And I was showing houses. I was old enough. I think I was 28. And they called me and said, come on home, got the diagnosis. And I walked in the door, and it was the second time I'd ever seen him cry. And he gave me a hug, and he cried a little bit. And he said, it's cancer. It's a tumor around the main artery to my brain, from the chest. And that's what it was. It wasn't a sinus infection. And he went straight to the hospital. We took him there. My brother at the time was 15. I was 28, or however much the math adds up to, 13 years younger. Sort of a yours, mine, and ours situation. Me and my mom, she was a single mom. She got hooked up with him, and they got married and had my little brother. Massive chemo, hardcore, as hard, as strong as he could take. And it was like an 18-month thing. He lived for 18 more months and then finally passed away. But because I was in this business, my mom, of course, was the primary caregiver, but I was able to at least help. He died. That left me and mom and my little brother. Fast forward another, 13 years, and my mom couldn't breathe one day. It was 2013, the last day, December 31st. I was showing houses, and she called and said, she was a smart lady. She was always very busy and industrious, smart lady. She called and said, could you swing by the fire station and bring home an oxygen tank? I can't really get a breath. And so, number one, I thought, well, she must be in bad shape because she knows better. That's not a thing that you can do. And she's asking for help. That's also not a thing she does. She was the kind of lady that would say, I kind of want the dresser on the other wall. Would you help me with that this evening? And I'd be like, yeah, sure. And when I got back there that evening, it would have already been done, right? She would have done the stuff. She was in the garden or doing stuff, painting or whatever. Took her to the ER, and the next day she was diagnosed with cancer. This time I was the primary caregiver. And for the next 6 months, every day, I was able to be there with her because of this career. I could still keep it going. It did suffer, but I could still pop out for showings from time to time, but for the most part, be on the phone and conduct a transaction and negotiate things back and forth. And so I've been thankful for this job, for this career, because I doubt there's very many W-2 type income jobs. At the time when she was sick, my brother was an adult. He had what I call a real job, a normal job, W-2, 9 to 5, and he couldn't be there for everything. But I was able to get her to those appointments, to the chemo treatments, to the myriad of doctor visits. It's a lot of work when somebody has a bad illness like that. I feel for the ones that don't have a support person or family, because just navigating through the healthcare field is treacherous. But I was so thankful to have been, that was the most precious 6 months of my life, looking back, because they were the last ones. She ended up dying from a indirect cause of the cancer was kind of getting under control, but she ended up getting pneumonia. She was 72, got that pneumococcal pneumonia, PCP pneumonia, and passed away. But I tell you that to tell you this. Welcome to this business. It can be a huge benefit to your life and those around you. The ceiling is almost unlimited. It's as high as you want to put in the work. It's flexible. That's the other thing. That was when my parents were sick. The flexibility was so precious to me. I could move things around. I might have to do stuff late at night, but I could accommodate appointments. When my dad was sick, again, my brother was 15, I could show up to those football games for him after dad died that dad wasn't around for. I could never replace my dad, but I could at least be another caring person in his life. And again, if it weren't for this job, this business, this career, that just wouldn't happen, right? So welcome to the industry. I wish you all the best. I will do my very best helping you navigate through all this material to get to that course, get to that exam. So here's how that works. You take this course. This is basically a pass-fail situation. Yes, there are some quizzes and assignments. The one that he gave you for tomorrow is one. And those are graded. But the grade is just to give you an idea of where you stand. That grade does not count toward whether or not you pass. However, listen to this part. If you don't complete those, I think 6 assignments so far at the moment, if you don't complete them, you don't qualify to sit for the final exam, the class final exam. Don't put it off until that week. I've had that happen before. I find out a student, there's been students who haven't even taken any of them, and they got to cram them in the last week right before the final exam date. So in that week up to May 4th, don't be having to take a whole pile of them. Yes, they're useful in the review, but you should have been working on those along the way, right? Procrastinating in this course, and I'm the biggest procrastinator there ever was when it came to college classes. Back then, there was no Red Bull. Back then, Mountain Dew. And so I'd drink 2 liters of Mountain Dew, and I almost would run out of time to take the test because I'd have to answer 3 questions and get up and go to the bathroom and come back because of all the Mountain Dew I'd had. But that was the only caffeine source. So I know what it is to be tempted to just say, yeah, okay, we'll get to it later, and then feel the pressure in the last quarter. Don't do it. It's impossible to make up. It's impossible to dig out of a hole. In fact, another problem that some students run into in this course is they take it for granted. They don't listen. And about week 3, they realize, oh, crap, they were right. I haven't been studying. I'm kind of behind. I'm starting to see because these first few chapters in the book, they're very basic. What is real estate? What's the definition? Useful fundamentally, but the first 5 or 6 chapters are nothing compared to chapters, let me think. Well, let me just tell you the topics. The topics on agency, that means how a broker works with a client. The topics on contracts, clearly. How do you write a contract? How you negotiate back and forth between buyer and seller? What is it that makes it a contract? Closings, how to do the procedures involved in closings, and financing. What is that whole conventional FHA, VA loan type, and the primary market, mortgage market, the secondary mortgage market, Fannie Mae, Ginnie Mae, all that stuff, and the math that goes with it. So that's sort of like the burger in the middle of the Big Mac in this course. That stuff, agency, contracts, financing, closings, valuation of how to value a property. Those are the big chapters. Let me show you what I mean about that. If you look in the Relink book that he referenced, it is this thing. The reason we call it the Relink book is it's an acronym of what this is really called, the Real Estate Licensing in North Carolina. Let me see. Let's do it this way. So it's that. That's why we call it the Relink book, because of the title. So when I talk about it, that's how you'll know what I mean. So this book outlines the procedures involved. Once you get through this course and then take the course final exam on May 4th and pass it, then you have the ability to apply to sit for the state required exam given by a testing company called PSI, P as in Paul, PSI. I never know what that stands for, but it's not just a real estate testing company. I put it there in the chat. PSI tests for all kinds of different things and across all kinds of industries. Anybody have a drone, mess with a drone, or know somebody that has one? To take drone video commercially, you have to have a special certification, and it requires basically knowing what pilots know. And I think it's called the Part 107 certification. Well, PSI is where you go to take that test to become a commercial drone pilot. So it crosses all industries. So when I say the PSI exam, I'm talking about that one. It's the PSI exam that finally gets you your real estate license. Let me show you this, and then we will come back to that Relink book. So you are here. We're doing this class. We're going to take this class. It's going to be, I think we're some 80 plus hours, something like that. You'll take the class final exam and you'll pass it. And then you'll have the ability to apply to the Real Estate Commission. That's here. We'll apply to that. We'll apply to the Real Estate Commission. It costs $100 at that point to submit your application to the Real Estate Commission. Then they will say, okay, now schedule your test, your PSI test, your exam through the PSI testing company. That's going to be another $56 to take that test. You have to go there. In Charlotte, it's off of Tyvola Road, but PSI has testing centers across the state. You can go to PSI, probably PSI.com, I think, and that'll show you where your closest testing center is. So you have to go there. It's once you get there, you sit at a computer terminal, and the workers there make you you got to put all your stuff in a locked up bag in another room, and you're sitting in a cubicle. They make you go through a very stringent, secure method. Yeah, thank you, Joseph. Good point. I'll circle back and get to that. So you have to take that test with their requirements, right? You have to have blank scratch paper and a dumb calculator, meaning one that can't have stored information in it, just number crunching. In the meantime, you also, around the time of the midterm, right about here, you need to submit an application for a background check. And it's a very specific website you go to, just not any random background check resource. The reason we suggest you do it around the midpoint of our class time is it's going to take a little bit of time for it to return. And that's going to depend on you. It'll depend on how many names you've had and how many places you've lived. If you've lived in lots of different places, they have lots of different places to check into. So I can't tell you how much it'll cost because it depends on how much of this they need to go looking up. It might be $20. It might be $100. That background check, when it's completed, it will be emailed to you and then also to the Real Estate Commission directly. So you'll have a copy and they'll have a copy. They need to have that on hand so that once you pass the PSI, then the Real Estate Commission is going to then look at your background check and they're going to see that you passed the PSI. And if all that checks out, part of that is called a character study. If all that checks out, you're going to get a provisional broker's license on inactive status. So you'll have a provisional broker's license on inactive status. Inactive. Inactive. What does that mean? It means you can't do real estate yet. You have to do another thing to turn it into active status. That means you're going to need to pick a BIC. What's a BIC? A broker in charge, or affiliate with a firm. Another way to say that. Pick a firm. You might have been interviewing at that point. You might have been talking to several firms, kind of getting an idea of what they offer for a commission split, for training. Everybody wants training. That's probably your biggest concern as a brand new agent is, how are you going to tell me how to do this stuff? So that's what you'll do. Once you affiliate, now you're going to be a provisional broker on active status. Now you can make money, sort of. You still have a couple more things to do. And we'll talk about those through the slides I'm about to share with you. But one of those things would be join the MLS, the multiple listing service, the online database where you list homes for sale that people have trusted you to help them sell. And also the place where you go to see what similar houses have sold for. That's how you learn about the market and what houses are worth. So the MLS is really important. Having a license is required to join the MLS. Another thing is the lockbox application for your phone. Used to be a pager looking device. Now it's an app on your phone, lets you open those blue boxes that are on those houses for sale. Another one is the Realtor Association. Realtor. Let's talk about Realtor. You notice what's not in here? An A. It's not Realtor. Let's reprogram our brains if that's the way we've been pronouncing it. I've been watching a TV show lately, an old show called Justified with that Oliphant guy. And he can't help himself. He always says Realtor, and it drives me crazy. Don't say Realtor. It's Realtor. And that's what you need to be. In order to join the MLS, in order to probably join your firm, you're going to have that Realtor Association membership. And that's another expense. All these are. The MLS is probably somewhere around $200 per quarter. The lockbox, I think, is another $35 per quarter. Realtor membership is going to be prorated depending on the day, the time in the year that you actually join it. But I think for the whole year, it's somewhere around $700, something like that, for the dues for the whole year. And then other stuff. Do you join a firm that requires you buy your own lock boxes, maybe your own signs? That's going to be just the little nuances of your own choices there. Now that you're a member of the MLS, you're a realtor, you're a provisional broker with active status, now you can go sell some houses and make some money. However, a clock is ticking. There's a clock ticking as a provisional broker. While you're a provisional broker, you have 18 months to complete 3 more post-licensing. They're called post-licensing classes. They're not as big as this one. They are 30 hours each. So it's a total of 93 30-hour classes, post-licensing classes. You have 18 months to do it from the time that you, not the time that you activated, but the time that you got your original provisional inactive license. I have inactive licensees in my post classes all the time. They never activated yet, and that's okay. They maybe just want to get all the education out of the way. Either way is fine. You can still be making money doing real estate as an active provisional, but you have to accomplish these classes within those 18 months. And that costs money too, of course. They tend to be about $190 to $200 a piece. So you're probably looking at another $600 for all three of those classes. And then you are a non-provisional broker, non-PB, on active status. So that's sort of the roadmap, a very messy roadmap, but let me show you another version of it. Looks a little cleaner. In that Relink book, if you go to the last page, there's a little graph, little flow chart showing you pretty much the same steps I just shared with you. So I'll talk about two different things. The class final exam, which is the exam that's a basically pass-fail. You pass that, now you can apply to the Real Estate Commission to take the PSI exam, or the PSI exam itself. So how similar to the PSI exam is the class final exam? I don't know. I think pretty close. The test taking sanctity is enormous. What does that mean? The Real Estate Commission takes it really seriously. If people try to cheat, if people try to talk about test questions, let me share something with you. So we don't know what is specifically on the test, except that we have the syllabus, right? We have the syllabus to go by, and that's our best bet. And then, of course, when people successfully pass it, that's useful. But they can't tell us what those questions were either. I'll get to that after our break. I'll pull it up. Speaking of break, that's probably a good moment. Let me because let's go ahead and have a break, and I'll see you back here in 10.
I've also heard you're using a new
Welcome back. Let's bring it on back together. Keep on talking about this process. There we go. Okay. So the Relink book looks like this. Again, it's got the whole process, the whole procedure for taking that PSI, scheduling to take that PSI exam. But one in particular part of this book, besides how the PSI goes and besides where you get your background check, which we'll see here in a minute. I'll tell you when it's time. It'll be around the point where we take our midterm exam. But here's what you'll do. You'll use this particular link, ncreccheck.com. That stands for North Carolina Real Estate Commission, NCREC. But here's the part of this book that will benefit you in your studying. It's on pages 16 and 17. And it shows you how many questions on the PSI exam are coming from which topics in the course, right? So notice chapter 1, basic real estate concepts, property insurance, another small chapter, basic construction, another small chapter, and basic real estate investment. All 4 of those chapters, which are pretty small, from all 4 of them, they're only going to pull 2 questions that will be on the national section of the PSI exam, and then 1 question on the state section, because that's the other point. Both the class final exam and the PSI exam are composed of 2 separate sections. A national section related to national real estate type questions, and then a state specific to North Carolina section. Frankly, the pass rates for the state section are worse than the national section. When you take the PSI exam, and if you were to fail the state section but pass the national, good news is you only have to retake the state one. You don't need to try again on the national one. So that's nice. You still have to pay another $156. $156 to retake whichever section, either or both. But this chart, notice here, chapter 2, and by the way, these references, the 2 and the 3, that's not chapters in your yellow book. Those are sections in the syllabus itself. So the PSI, this chart related to the PSI exam, is referencing the topics mentioned in the syllabus. And unfortunately, I like the book that we use. I've used it for the last 5 years, but it doesn't line up perfectly with the syllabus. So I'll give you some idea of what chapters in the book versus the syllabus items we're talking about. But notice this. As we move on down the chart, you saw a lot of single-digit questions on the test. But then we get to this one. Here's the first one of the burger in the Big Mac I'm talking about of this course: brokerage, agency. The chapters on agency and brokerage relationships start getting bigger in test question numbers. We're going to have 10 questions, or you will, on the PSI exam national portion about brokerage relationships, how brokers are expected to interact with clients, and then 11 of them on the state of North Carolina section of the PSI exam. And then more stuff, getting more focused about agency, talking about the actual agency agreements and contracts that we use, another 7 and another 8. So just this little bundle of 4 is a pretty sizable chunk of questions. And then next in line, actually, is basic contract law. And there's 13 questions on the national portion of the exam. And then if we skip around a little bit, real estate finance is another 12 questions on the national. And then if we go to the next page here, the real estate license law and commission rule is another double-digit item. 10 questions on the state section of the exam are about the North Carolina Real Estate Commission license law and commission rules. This is the stuff that can get you in trouble by not following it. This is what the Real Estate Commission will discipline you for if you violate these laws and rules. And so it's really important. You'll notice the state section of the PSI has 40 total questions. So it's a fourth of those about the license law and commission rules. I'll reference license law commission rule quite a bit. And then also notice this, real estate math, 8 on the national portion. What does that mean? I would rewrite this to say real estate math calculations. There will be 8 calculation-specific questions, which you probably will need a calculator for. However, the Real Estate Commission test question writers know how to ask a math question without requiring you to use a calculator. So there could be some sort of math type questions that you don't need to calculate, but you still need to, it's still sort of a math question. There's no math like chapter in this course. They just pop up along the way. Like when we get to the property tax chapter, we'll do what it takes to calculate property taxes. When we get to the financing chapter, we'll learn about how to calculate discount points, origination fees, and interest, annual interest. and all that fun stuff. Back to the license law and commission rule. This thing is what you can get disciplined for. So let's see what that means. Let me share that with you. You can go to the Real Estate Commission website. It's ncrec.com. By the way, there's lots of resources there. You don't need them really for this class, but the once you are a licensee, meaning you actually have a license number with the Real Estate Commission, every month they'll send you an email bulletin, a bulletin with articles they want us to be aware of. And then a section of this bulletin is the disciplinary section. This is part of what happens if somebody breaks a license law or commission rule and gets disciplined for it. Sort of a public humiliation component, right? So here's what happens. And let's look at a couple of these. This person failed to provide and review a required document, a disclosure about how agency works, called the Working with Real Estate Agents disclosure. We will talk about that over and over and over when we get to the agency chapter. Didn't talk about it with them. Didn't actually get a written listing agreement before he started doing what you're supposed to do to help somebody sell their house. Forged client signatures on these agreements and did not provide copies of these things as well. Oh, and he also failed to report a criminal conviction within the required 60 days. What do they do? Well, no surprise, permanent revocation. He's not doing real estate again. He's done. That one's kind of coming out pretty heavy. You don't see a lot of these revocations, but you see more suspensions. Because when the commission suspends a broker license, sometimes, quite often, you will see that they stayed the suspension, meaning, yes, you're officially suspended, but you can still do real estate, maybe for an amount of time, while still in this suspended category. But if you don't do these conditions we've given you, like probably attend extra classes to get better at the thing they screwed up on, then your suspension will kick in and you have to stop doing real estate. So sometimes that happens. What happened here, a very common one, when we collect earnest money or any sort of deposit from a client, we can't just hold on to that. And your firm can't put it in the operating account with the firm bank account. It's got to sit in a special kind of bank account called a trust account. And that's for other people's money. And so people do it wrong all the time. I see a lot of trust account violations. And when you mix your own firm money with a client's money, it's called commingling. That's a testable item, by the way. Commingling, write down commingle. And so what ended up happening, they got suspended. This one I found pretty interesting. I've never seen this before in all my years of looking at these disciplinary actions. Look at this. If you count them, it's 10 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 people. All of these people got reprimanded because the commission found that before they got their license, they participated in a social media exam study group and they actively shared confidential exam information or encouraged others to gather that exam information. Here's what happens when the Real Estate Commission catches somebody sharing exam questions. They reprimand him. How would you like to get your license, brand new licensee, and you start out with a reprimand? It's really a slap on the wrist, note in your file, we are reprimanding you. I'm sure if it turns into a repeat kind of a thing, it gets worse. But there are essentially 4 ways the Real Estate Commission can discipline us. Reprimand is the lightest one. Censure is sort of like a reprimand, but you would get the reprimand first. Suspension or revocation, revoking the license. So that one kind of surprised me. 10 people in that study group. For one thing, that they would do it. I mean, online. If you're going to do it, why would you do it online? Not saying you should do it, but this next one got permanently revoked for, let's see, it was a money thing, another money issue, another trust account problem, and This one was a material fact related item. In fact, 47% of the disciplinary actions a couple of years ago were because of material facts that weren't handled properly. We as brokers are required to disclose anything we know about the property to everybody in the whole world. We can't keep any secrets about the fact that the roof leaks or that there's excessive mold in the crawl space. So people do that wrong all the time. And if someone complains, that can be a problem. This one talks about a random audit, and they caught another problem with the trust account. Random audit, that means the real estate commission can come to a real estate firm at any moment randomly and say, we need to look at some of your files, make sure you're doing this right. So your broker in charge of the firm you end up with, it's got to be ready for that and have those files available and be ready to stop what they plan to do that day and accommodate that auditor so that they can verify those files. There's a handful of these. This is also Googleable, guys. This is on the public record. If somebody were to do a search for any of these people's names, this article showing this action could show up somewhere in those pages of the search results. So it's kind of a big deal. So that is some more testable material. How can the Real Estate Commission discipline licensees? Reprimand, censure, suspension, or revoke. Another thing to mention to you, let me go back to the slides and then I'll come back around to these various resources. Here we go. Okay, there's my information, by the way. Go ahead and jot that phone number and email down. Feel free to text me, email me with any questions or concerns along the way. Glad to help. You can screenshot it. Screenshot. How do you say that? And then you can also see at the bottom of most slides, it also has my phone number and a reference to a website. That website, askneilpender.com, is actually, let's see if it'll show you here. Pull it up. It's actually a YouTube channel that I set up for you guys. I did it for the last class I taught. That's when I started. That was the first time I did it. And here it is. You can just go there. You can, there are a couple things that are videos, but only two, like the first 2 days of that last class I taught, most are going to show up under live streams. In fact, I'm live streaming this right now. You can see it. There it is, live. And I'm going to try to do that for every class. That does not give you permission or freedom, or I wouldn't take that as an excuse to miss class, because you don't know what it's going to contain. We go off on tangents sometimes, and it's important to be here in the moment. Plus, the Zoom records the amount of time that you're in, and you have to have that certain minimum amount of time. But this can be useful. And I've done another one, another YouTube channel that I pointed domain to, that's Impact Broker Coach. This one's been around a little bit longer. If you scroll all the way to the oldest videos, you'll see lots of little math calculation narrations. And it's just me kind of with an iPad and voiceover showing you how to do some common math problems. And then we get into some other stuff, some live stream too for those classes, but a lot of very specific topic related things. Also, if you have a question specifically that you ask me in between class sessions, I will sometimes answer it and send it to everybody just to benefit the whole class. And so this was one where someone asked me a certain question, and I don't know if I had any graphics there, if it was just my big old face, but I will show you a walkthrough or I'll do something and then give it to everybody. I think this was maybe another one about how to calculate acreage in square feet. So those are some resources as well. Another one is Quizlet. Anybody familiar with Quizlet.com? You can look up North Carolina, Modern Real Estate Practices of North Carolina. That's the name of our textbook. You could do a search in Quizlet to find some. This is one that I made, just one. I haven't done very many. Be careful. all right? Because there are some mistakes that people have made, but here's the idea. It's basically an online flashcard. So like this, what is agency? You click it, it tells you the definition. You go to the next one. What's an agent? Click it, go to the next one. Subagent, client. And then I get into a little more detail. What kind of dual agency restores loyalty and all kinds of fun stuff. So it's just a way to have that. I still suggest that you make your own flashcards because I think the creation of them has a lot of value in retaining the information. We talked about this stuff already. Jason covered most of this stuff. Pretty much stay muted. Keep your video on. You know all that now. Use that chat. You've already done that. We've done all that good stuff. You can also, go for it. Please. I'll send you a link. Let me make a note of that. Sure thing. That's just on one topic right now. I'll try to add some more along the way. But there are other Quizlets that you could benefit from as well. We're going to start, by the way, just to recap, I'll have the room open by 5. And it's nice if you, sometime between 5 and 5:30, go ahead and log on. Don't do it like at the last minute, because then I have to kind of be watching and letting people in. It's just smoother if you're already in. Then you can feel free to mute and turn off your video until start time. But I just want to reiterate, this is a college level course in terms of how much content is being covered in the short amount of time we're in. You do need some supplies, pens and pencils and highlighters. The highlighters come in handy because your book and the syllabus, both, you need to turn those into review materials. What does that mean? This. Oops. Here is your book, live and in person. This one is actually the 9th edition because this is the one that I've marked more. This is the one I got when I first started teaching. But here's your 10th edition, by the way. I do have that one. But here's what you're looking for. Here's what you want this thing to look like by the end of the course. Maybe neater, but definitely with notes in these big fat margins, definitely with highlights. You want to turn this book into a thing that you can just flip through and see what the 5 or 6 most important points of this book, this page are, right? I even have notes here that are the exact same as what's here, but the point is to get it in your head, right? To remember on the fly really quick, oh yeah, that's important. And then that was important. So you want this thing to be an interactive tool. I mean, look at this thing. Good grief. All kinds of notes in the margins, all kinds of highlights. This also mentions like North Carolina specific things. Let's see. There we go. Anytime it says North Carolina, make a note of that because that's going to could show up on the state portion of the PSI. So this is kind of what you're looking for. This is an 800-page book, guys. Do you need to read every page? No. How do you know what to focus on in this book? From the syllabus. The way you should start in every chapter that we cover is with the syllabus. So go over to that. Jason mentioned a great idea. Print that thing off. You don't need to print everything, but that's one of them I would have you print off. Here it is. Here's the syllabus. The most recent version. I'll show you the very intro in a minute. But as we get into it, you can see here, first chapter, section 1, happens to also be chapter 1 in the book, but not always the case. It first of all tells us how long I should be spending in class on the material, and it'll be pretty close to that. It also references which level, 1, 2, or 3. The levels have to do with how much you need to know about it. If it's a topic in level 1, it's pretty much just know the definition. Don't need to know much more than what is the thing. A level 2, you need to know a little more, have some more in-depth, be able to compare and contrast the types of things. Level 3 is the most in-depth that you are going to need to know about something. Be able to discuss in substantial detail, defend something, develop or formulate something. So those 3 levels will show up in this material. And so in this case, look at all this nice white space that you can write in. You can reference the definition of land. I would print this thing off and I would write it out. After I read it in the chapter, go back and quiz yourself with this syllabus. So here's how I would do it. With every chapter, first step, read the syllabus section about that topic. So you're going to be scrolling through, you're going to be reading, okay, land, I'll look for that word in the chapter of the book, real estate, real property, personal property, just kind of reading through. And then these concepts, public and private land use. And then when you're in section 2, sometimes they give you a little more than just the words. They actually tell you the bundle of legal rights include all of these things. So that's pretty much it. You could make a note, make a reference from the textbook. It's on page 37, something like that. So use this syllabus as an active study tool. And again, your goal should be to turn this syllabus, mark it up completely with highlights and write notes in it. That and the textbook need to have very heavy notes and highlights in them. So when you are ready to review the material in 8 or 9 weeks, you can get right down to business and catch the most important parts of what we learned fast and first. So read the syllabus, then go back and read the textbook. The textbook, again, there we go. The chapters of a given text, of a given, any given chapter in the textbook is composed the same way. So like chapter 2 here, it's got some words, some vocabulary words. Some of those, probably not all of these, but the syllabus words that you saw are going to show up here. It's going to talk about the actual, I would do this. When you read the textbook, after you've read the syllabus, flip to the back. Don't read it all the way yet. Go to the back of that chapter and look at the key point review. Read that first. That's going to get right down to the point of the chapter. It's also going to have some words that pop up that you recognize because you read the syllabus first. So read that key point review, and some are larger than others, and then go back and read the chapter from start to finish. You might want to do that in a couple of different ways. You might want to just kind of make it your goal to locate the stuff you saw in the syllabus within the chapter and mark it. And then go back and read it more thoroughly. Or maybe you want to read it thoroughly the first time and then go back through and mark it from what you saw in the syllabus. The syllabus is what's going to help you turn this 800-page book into something way more manageable. You right? So go back, reference that syllabus. If you were in a library or your dining room table and you had a big desk to spread out on, you should have this book. You should have the printed out syllabus. Read the syllabus first, find those items within the chapter, and then read the whole chapter, marking it as you go. It's okay to read through it as a skim first and then more detailed later, or vice versa. I think those are very key and useful study tips. Okay, so that's why you need all this stuff. And there it is again. Read the units before class, read the syllabus section before class, then read the chapter. There are quizzes after every chapter in the book. They are not necessarily like what you'll see on the PSI exam, but they do quiz you on what you just read and learned. Any questions that occur to you, things that are confusing? When we get to like chapters 2 and 3 and 4, you'll get into some weird words like an estate for the life of another, and fee simple absolute, and fee simple defeasible subject to a condition subsequent. I know. I'm sorry. I wish I could rename these things. But those are going to be maybe some confusion points. And then we don't use Google Classroom. I need to change that slide. We use another thing called Notion. That's where you can post any questions. And then compare. Study as much as you can every day outside of class. You won't survive this class and succeed if all you do is come and show up to class. And there's our book. There's our points in the book. Oh, there's some other things in the book too, in the very back. Like any textbook, it might have been a while since you opened what is sort of like a textbook. But let's take a look at these things. If we go to the back of this book, for one thing, if you ever need to find a topic really fast, there's the index. Word by word, right? You can tell you what page that topic is on. Fair housing is on page 525. Fannie Mae, they reference it in 4 different pages. And then right before the index is another, well, there's also the answers to all the quizzes in the back, but the glossary of terms. When you see the terms in the front of a chapter, here's how you can find the definitions real quick. So all of it is in the back. You could also find them within the chapter, but all those definitions to all those terms are back here too. And there's more. There's math. For you math phobes, myself included, there are some practice problems for math, like little refreshers. Some of the math that is going to be helpful to you is to be able to convert from decimal to percentage or percentage to decimal. It's really just moving a decimal point back and forth, but it recaps how to do all that fun stuff. And there's some percentage problems that have to do with that. And here's the math review. Measurement related things. You do have to be able to measure the square footage of houses. And so you need to be able to do a little bit of geometry, figure out the area. Length times width is the square footage of an area. And then, this whole appendix back here is a little booklet that's available as a standalone PDF that I have in your Google Drive. And it's about how to measure property. It's called Residential Square Footage Guidelines. It's a yellow booklet. You'll see it as a PDF, but it's also here in the book. And then they also have the Relink book. I would ignore that. Don't look at the Relink book printed in the back of your textbook because it's an older version. The same thing for the comments section of the real estate license law and commission rules, this thing. This is referenced in the back of this textbook, but I'm going to give you the most recent version as a PDF. That's what you should read and study. And we're going to talk a lot about that comments section in just a minute. So study and really get familiar with all these different appendices in the back of the book. They are great resources that will help you succeed in this thing. Okay, now, if you were to order a copy of the printed out license law and commission rules from the Real Estate Commission, it would look like this. You would go to the Real Estate Commission website. You'd go to, let me see, I always forget. There we go. You could actually buy it. Let me see how much it is. Oh, it's $6.50. If you want a printed out version, you could always obviously print it out. It's, I don't know, it might be 150, 200 pages, something like that. But it's got several sections in it. This is the entire booklet. It's I don't have one around here, printed out version, but when you show up to a live in-person class, we just give you this entire booklet, but we're going to give you the individual PDFs of the sections out of this book that matter. And here it is, three particular sections. I'm going to give you a PDF of the license laws themselves. You're going to know it's a license law because it'll start with 93A, the 93A dash something. It all falls under North Carolina general statutes. If you get a license law about I don't know, like negligent misrepresentation, what is it? Then if you get a general statute 93A dash this, that, and the other, the good news is you don't have to know it that much for the test. You don't have to know it by number, the number of the law. You just need to know what the law means. But if you're trying to study and learn the thing, you can look it up. You can just Google search it, and I'll show you that in a minute. So there's one PDF about just the license laws, the 93A stuff. There's another one about the commission rules, the rules the Real Estate Commission has set up. Those are recognizable because they'll say 58, like 58A or something like that. And then the third document, third PDF, is the one I want you to start with. That is called the License Law and Commission Rule Comments. It's about 30 pages, and it looks like this. There's this PDF, and what they've done is the Real Estate Commission has provided all of these things, and this document is written a little more easy to digest. It's not as much legal attorney language. It's more kind of normal people language. So they just they write it in a more conversational tone. So I like for you to kind of lead with this one. And it's got things like, what is a provisional broker, right? What is a non-provisional broker? What's a broker in charge? And notice here too, they reference one of those 93A things, GS 93A-2. That means it's a licensed law thing. So the comments section, the PDF that we're looking at here, references back to the license law and also the commission rules. So you could go there. You could cut and paste into your browser and it would pop up in Google, or you could go find it directly in the separate license law or separate commission rules PDF that I gave you, that's available in the Google Drive that I'll give you in a minute. And then here's one that's a commission rule. It doesn't have 58 in front, but you'll know it's a commission rule because first of all, it says it, but also like the A.0 something, those are commission rules. Again, you don't need to know them by number. I'm just trying to reference them and help you understand what means what. And so as you're going through this comments section, it'll get into all sorts of stuff that's going to be on that PSI state portion of the exam. Those 10 questions coming out of this license law commission rules, they're all here except for a handful of things. There are 10 items that you can't find that you do need to know, but aren't here in the comments section. There's 10 things. How do we know what 10 things? It's in the syllabus. I'll show you in a minute. So as we go on down through, what is a limited non-resident commercial broker? Activities requiring a real estate license. That's a good one. You have to have a real estate license if you're going to do real estate activities for another person for compensation. All three. It's a 3-part test. Are you doing all 3 of those things? Then you need a license. What if you're helping your grandma manage her duplex for rent, but you're doing it for free because you love your grandma? Do you need a license for that? Tell me in the chat. Need a license to help grandma for free manage her duplex rental? No, you do not. What about if you live in grandma's duplex on one side and you manage the other side as a rental, picking the tenant, collecting the rent, and you do it for grandma because she doesn't charge you rent to live in the one side you live in? Do you need a license for that? You got it. Good job. Look at you guys showing off. You did something, real estate, for someone, grandma, and you did it for some sort of compensation. They like to, on the test, probably pull on your heartstrings a little bit, but it doesn't matter if it's your grandma or your mom or your dad or your kid. It's still another person, not you. What if it's your duplex that you own as a rental? Can you list that for sale or list that for rent without a real estate license? You got it. You're not doing it for someone else. Well done. So it continues on like that. And then it talks about another important thing that we might get to, if not tonight, tomorrow. What can unlicensed people do? You might want to hire an unlicensed employee, like an assistant, and you can let them do some of the stuff, but not everything that you can do. Some things they can't do because they don't have a license, and here they are. Like 14 things listed right here on the left. Read it, learn that stuff. There are also some exemptions, more exemptions about not needing a real estate license, but still doing full out real estate. Here are the exemptions. If somebody makes someone else, gives them power of attorney to handle their affairs, well, it's just like they are that person now. So yes, they could list it for sale by owner and sell it on their own. Even though it's not their property, they are the power of attorney for the owner of the property. Or an attorney who has a law license. If they're doing law work, legal work, and part of that legal work involves needing to handle some real estate, then no, they don't need a license. Talks about who is on the real estate commission. It's 9 people who are on the board of real estate commission. You do need to know all that stuff. Pretty much this entire comment section. So some more homework for you. Between now and next Wednesday, I would at least read through, let me see here. Read through page 10, half of page 10, 1 through 9, and then half of page 10. Cover all of that between now and next Wednesday, because in the syllabus, this material doesn't show up until like week 8. It is section 21 of the syllabus. Here's the syllabus again. And we're pretty much going to go in order. But look down here. It's not until like the very end. But it's so important that I make sure that we cover this stuff well before that. So I'm going to pause in our progress along the way several times and cover chunks of this, probably in 4 big chunks. It's going to be that first bit. Then it's going to be the section on willful and negligent misrepresentation and omission. Then it's going to be the part about trust accounts, and then it's going to be the part about timeshares. So those are the 4 main sections that I divide this License Law Commission rule material into and intersperse it earlier. So we will, by the time we get to this in the syllabus, we can really treat those 2 days as review time. We'll review the License Law and Commission rules, but you would have gotten hit over the head with it so much by then, we can also spend that time on some other material too, as needed. So I kind of custom tailor this class for the people that are in it, right? For however far along we get. Here's another thing. Speaking of which, I need to change this. But the study guide. I've made a little study guide for you just to kind of help you reference the chapters compared to the syllabus sections. And I don't have very many dates in it because, again, it's just going to let you know what's coming next. But it may not be that we cover this exact thing, chapters 4 and 5, on a date that I were to put in here. So I'm not even going to put the date there. You're just going to know what's coming next in line. And you're going to know that in this case, chapter 6 of the textbook is covered in section 5 of the syllabus. I think that's probably the most useful part of this thing. What's coming next, and also how to compare. Environmental issues is chapter 20 of the textbook, but it's section 6 of the syllabus. Then we get back into normal land, and chapter 7 is same as section 7 in the syllabus. Same for 8, same for 9, same for 10. Then we get weird again. Chapters 14 and 15 are about financing in the textbook, and that's section 11 in the syllabus. And so on. So I'll have this in the Google Drive for you as well. Just, again, to help you know what's coming next. Okay, so you're going to read that comment section up to page 10. Then, let's see. Come back to home base here. The Relink book, there are some things in the Relink book that you need to know besides just the procedures, but for the most part, it's that chart that's important. But it's all about the process and applying for it. By the way, it does tell you how many questions are on the PSI. 80 plus questions on the PSI exam. The reason it says plus is they throw in about 5 more that you won't know which are which, but they throw in some testable questions, meaning experimental questions, probably is a better way to say it. They want to try out some questions on you. These questions don't count against your score and don't count against your time, and you'll never know which are which. You might. If it's like really easy or really hard, you might be like, well, that might have been one of those experimental questions. But they do this to develop future questions. Yes, somebody says, will the license law and rules and comments be in the Google Drive? They will. They are there, and I'll give you that link after class. And then 40 plus on the state. And then I believe you've got, I'll show you in a minute. You have to score at least 57 correct on the national. That's a 71 to pass the national on the PSI. And then 29 correct on the state. That's a 72.5. But that's the PSI exam. What's the passing rate for our class final exam? 75%. Got to have a 75 or better on the class final exam so that you can then move past that and take the PSI. They give you on the PSI 2 hours for the national and 1.5 hours for the state. And we, on the final of the class exam, we separated into those 2 sections too. Once you have applied to take the exam, the PSI, you have 180 days to pass it. So if you have to retake a section or maybe one or both sections, do it within those 180 days, and you still have to pay to do the retake though. But then you don't have to go back through a course first. The course is good for 3 years, by the way. You take the course and you have 3 years to take the PSI. Yeah, that Relink has all the sections, turn the syllabus into a review guide, just like the textbook. And we talked about this too. Syllabus section doesn't necessarily match up with textbook chapters. Those are the levels. We talked about that. Other resources. Feel free to Google and YouTube again, but be careful. Quizlet, we talked about. This is, I think, useful to know just as an FYI. Are you going to make $1 million the first year? Are you going to make $1 the first year? It depends, of course, on lots of things. There's no surprise there. It depends on who you know, for one thing. I've met plenty of brand new agents that come out hard, swinging, like selling $1 million in real estate. By the way, if you sell $1 million in real estate, that probably means $20,000 to $30,000 in commission, depending on your split. Maybe more like 15 to 25. Because you got to split with your firm and then pay taxes. It's all gross, right? Got to pay all your expenses and taxes. So it kind of depends on who you know. If you have a spouse that has a job with a big company and people that you know because of that network immediately trust you to help them buy and sell stuff, you could get rolling real fast. Or you might have to start really slowly because, just noticed I've got some overlap there. And sometimes you just have to gut it out and develop that network one by one. People you meet at the ball games, at the grocery store, somehow manage to, it's kind of easy to strike up the conversation without being overbearing. You say, oh, what you do for a living? And they'll tell you, and eventually they'll reciprocate. And then you bring it up and they'll say things like, oh, you're in real estate? I was kind of wondering what my house is worth these days. Or we're kind of thinking about buying something. It's all in how obnoxious you may not be, right? Don't be that. Don't be that overselling salesperson. Be the trusted resource, and they'll probably, they're going to be looking at you skeptically at first, like, oh boy, when's the big sales pitch? But when you don't act that way, they're going to more quickly trust you to start asking you some questions. So it's good to stay on top of the market, kind of have some stuff to talk about when those conversations come up. And so it also depends on who you align yourself with, what firm you're with, what type of firm, not a specific one, because it really depends. You can be just as successful in a big firm as you can as a little small mom and pop shop. The little small one might give you more on the job, follow me, shadow me kind of training that you would benefit from. It goes back to what do you need the most? And then more importantly is leap before you look, right? Just do it. Just do the stuff. I'm the worst about planning myself to death. So just to get out there and do it is the key there. We talked a little bit about this just to kind of give it to you a little more detailed. Taking this course plus the book and plus maybe a couple other things, somewhere around the $500 mark. Applying to take the PSI and with the real estate commission, $156. Then once you get the license, you got to renew it every year. That's another testable item, by the way. How much does it cost to renew your real estate license? $45. Write that one down. When is it due? By June 30th every year. Those 3 post-licensing courses, it's about $600 total for all 3. Annual continuing education tends to be $50 each, and there's 2 of them. There's an update course you have to take, plus an elective course of your choice, about $50 each, depending on what school you go to for that. So about $100 for those 2 a year. To subscribe to the MLS per year, you pay it quarterly, but it's about $780 total. Realtor dues per year is about $600 total. Getting set up with the MLS, about $250 or so. And then there's some other stuff. Depends on the firm you're with. Business cards, marketing, lock boxes, signs, website, all that fun stuff. So the cost just to kind of get up and going that first year could turn into about $2 or $3 grand. Oh, yeah, okay. I was catching up in the chat. Read the comments PDF, the License Law Commission Rules comments PDF that I'll provide you in the Google Drive after class. That's the thing I want you to read 10 pages in by next week, please, and thank you. The Relink book, just kind of skim through that to kind of get a handle of the procedure, and then look at that chart on pages, I think, 16 and 17. So it depends on, what you want to accomplish. There's all kinds of things that a newly licensed person could do. You could just be your own single agent general brokerage person within a firm. Pick a firm, work in that firm, do your thing. It's all you. Or you could join a team. There are big teams or small teams that might be looking for a buyer agent, and you could specialize in that one area. The good part of a team is you don't have to do the lead generation activities, because that's the part that's challenging. As a new agent, finding business, right? You get really good at finding it, then you get a piece, get somebody, and you work with them. And then if you let that lead generation activity kind of fall off, when you get that one piece of business closed, you're kind of looking around like, okay, I need another one. So it's a balance between keeping the lead generation machine going while still doing the actual real estate activities. So it's, it's always a roller coaster. It's just it's a feast or famine sometimes. Sometimes you've got lots of business going on. Sometimes it gets quiet. You could also work for a builder, new home sales rep. The good part of that, again, is that they handle the lead gen. You're just working with people that come into the model home. You're basically doing open houses all the time. And you have a very small window of time to win someone over. It's a whole different kind of skill set. And I would always suggest that you, in your spare time, go to those model homes. Tell them, look, I'm getting into the business. I'm not a buyer. I just wanted to see what your product is so I can get on top of the inventory, and then hang out. Go through the house, let them get back to their business. And if you're lucky, maybe a client will walk in and you can kind of eavesdrop and listen to how good they are with building rapport quickly with brand new potential clients. That's a lesson. That's sort of a workshop in itself. Nobody better than a good new home sales rep at getting someone to feel at ease, helping win them over and get them interested in a product. And and we would do well to learn from that. You could also be a licensed assistant, but all of it kind of boils down to some form of lead generation. How are you going to find people to do real estate for? So that's the part that can really be stressful for some people. Okay, let's have another break and we'll come back and talk about this license law and commission rules, dig into some of that. I'll see you in 10 minutes. welcome back. Let's bring it on back in. Let me share something else with you. So, we have our time together 2 nights a week for the foreseeable future. What happens if you have a question, if you have a resource need? How can I communicate with you without having to email a million times and things get lost in the email? So I've made a Notion space online for you, and I've invited you to it. So look for that in your email after class tonight and accept it and go there and do what you got to do and leave me a comment. I can't zoom it in. I wish that I could. It won't let me pinch to zoom here. But here it is. It's our Go School pre-licensing Notion page. Sorry you can't see it too well. But it's got a little comments section up top, and just send me a comment once you get in there later tonight or tomorrow and let me know that you got in, because I want everybody to get this thing, have access to it. I've got a couple things here, including the link to the Google Drive I've been talking about. That's here. It's also in the chat, by the way. You can click on that link in the chat. It'll show you the Google Drive, and I'll walk you through that here next. Also, I have those 2 YouTube channels referenced here, both of them, because they've got different content on both of them. And then my contact information is in there too. The Zoom link, if you ever lose it, that's mentioned here. It's kept here. It's going to be the same link every night. I will not send you a reminder every class session. It is now for you to know. Put it in your calendar. Click on that same link to join in. That's your job to come back in. And the policy and procedures handbook, and then some other material that you'll need to know about later on. Answers to things that previous students, I just kind of duplicated and recycled an old Notion classroom because it had some content that was added based on people's questions. And so I'll show you that stuff, share it with you when we reach those topics. So again, that is an email. Hopefully that email you use to sign up is the best one. If it's not, let me know. Email me your best email if it's not the one that you use to sign up. I have a roster of all of you, and I want to make sure I'm working with the right email. Okay, the Google Drive, this famous Google Drive we've been talking about. Here's what it looks like. I can zoom into this one. This is what you see. So I've kind of made it a little easier. I've got 2 things marked as read weekly. The comment section that we just talked about. There it is. I want you to read 5 to 10 pages of that every week. I want you to start with 10 by next week, right? And then also the syllabus. You need to be reading that weekly because that's what tells you what you need to cover out of the textbook. That's how you know what to focus on the most. So those are 2 very important ones. And then those welcome slides that Jason talked about with you earlier tonight, they're referenced here. Here's where you can connect with each other. If you click on that shared contact, it's just a blank spreadsheet right now. And of your own choice, put in your information as you wish. Whatever, you don't even need to put in, if all you want to do is be contacted via email, then don't put in your phone. You do you, right? Do your thing. Answer those questions, put it in there if you want to. That's how you can connect. And so that'll be a permanent part of the Google Drive if you need to refer back to somebody's info that they've put in there. Besides that, it's just going to be more content along the way that I'll reference. I'll say, now you need to go to this in your Google Drive. But part of that is that square footage guidelines thing I showed you in the back of the textbook. Here's what it looks like as a PDF, the yellow. It shows how we are supposed to measure houses. The Real Estate Commission, write this one down. This is a free advanced notice, little testable item. Does the Real Estate Commission require that we report square footage? No, they do not care. The only thing they care about is if you choose to report square footage, it better be accurate. Why would you choose to report square footage? Because the multiple listing service requires it. We have to put it in when we list a house because the MLS says we do. And since we have to, because they say so, the Real Estate Commission says, well, make sure it's accurate. And that's what these guidelines are for. How do you measure? We'll talk about it. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Natalie. I'll fix that. See if I can fix it now. I'll work on that. I'll fix that for you. And then got some more folders at the top of this page, got some sample forms that we'll reference along the way. From one of them we'll get to when we reach the section on contracts. This is our standard contract form that we use. We're not, as brokers, required to use it, but it's the one that we tend to because it's available. So all that and all those other forms. And then this license law folder. Oh, look, there's the comment section again. I duplicated it and put it on that first page so that you could find it easier, but it also lives here because it's one of the license law and commission rules docs. So those three that we saw earlier, the license law stuff, the commission rules stuff, and the comment section, they are also right here. And some other random things like that we'll need later. I'm not even going to talk about them right now. So that's your student access folder. I'll get that shared contact info changed so that you can use it. Okay, now I'll know. What else? Back to our slides. Oh yeah, one more thing. Practice exams, practice questions. You don't need them yet because you don't know the content yet. But when that time comes, there's lots of resources, and I'll give them to you more later. But one of them is through Dearborn. Dearborn, the publisher of your book. They have some material. Another one is this resource I'm putting in the chat. They will sell you access for an amount of time to their database of practice questions. It's 1,200 total, 800 national related questions and 400 state specific to North Carolina related questions. And you can pay like $50 for access for 75 days or 90 days. I forget what. Go to the website. You'll find the details. And you basically go there when you bought this access. We don't get paid for this. This isn't like a kickback or anything. This is just a resource that I've found helpful. You go there and once you've paid, you can say, make me a test of 50 questions or 100 questions or however much you have time to mess with. And they will pull from their 1,200 questions and make that custom test for you. And then you just sit through it and answer the questions and get that practice in. There's something else I was going to say. I just blanked on it. I'll think of it in a minute. Usually when I forget like that, it comes back within a minute. So there's a resource that I've found. I've done it myself. Oh, you don't have to take both. You could just pay for access to their national section or their state section, either or both. For price changes, depends on how much you want to pay for. Now, license law and commission rules. Let's talk about the first bit of that comment section. First of all, the comment section is a great way to get familiar with all of that. But the Real Estate Commission has specifically told us we don't want you to have them only read it. They don't want you to only focus on the comment section alone. They want you to also know and look through and study the license law and commission rules. Of this comment section, there are 10 items that are not to be found here that you still need to know for the test. Those 10 items we find in the syllabus. So if we open our syllabus and scroll down to section 21, here we go. And then go to section C, ABC, this one. Notice the note. This section is not discussed in the license law and commission rules comments, but it still must be covered. It's 10 things. You won't find these 10 things in the comments section, but here's what they are. They're the most basic things and that we will cover within the next few minutes. We're going to get to that right now. Also, side note, when you look at your syllabus PDF like this, it's got hot links to these things. So if you want to look at the license law talking about the licensing of individual people, click on that hot link, and then let me flip over to the web, and there it is. It opens up in your browser. Won't let me zoom in, but General Statute 93A-4, and there it is. So it's a really easy way to kind of go back and forth, flip all around, and see these different things. And we're back to the syllabus. There we go. So let's talk about these 10 things right now. They're the easiest ones, by the way. This is not super complicated, but here's where you find them. The things that you can't find in the comments section are right here. Section 21 of the syllabus, letter C. Those things plus the comments section should get you pretty good ways toward understanding all this stuff. We've already talked about what it takes or what the requirement is for having a license. Oh, by the way, the comment section PDF also shows up in the back of your textbook, but don't look at that one. It's there, but they might have, and they did, since this textbook was printed. I think they print out a new edition every 5 years or so, and this one is still 2 or 3 years old. So we're going to be having the same 10th edition of your yellow textbook for a while. But that comment section and the license law and the commission rules updates sometimes yearly. So I would just use the PDF. Don't use the one in the back of the textbook. Who needs a license? Someone doing real estate for someone else for compensation. You all quizzed on that really well. You did great. That compensation thing is something of value. You can't go around the rule or the law just by saying, well, it wasn't cash. They gave me a case of beer. They gave me Panther tickets, Hornets tickets, whatever. Nope. That's still something of value. And if you did real estate for someone else in exchange for that thing of value, you need a license to do that. So, sorry. How many kind of licenses are there? Here are the various kinds of real estate categories there are, but there's not a license for each category. There's only one license. Just the one broker license will let you do any of these things. What do these things include? Commercial real estate. Anybody want to do commercial? Hold up your hand in the window if you're thinking about maybe commercial real estate someday. It's a whole separate animal. Wow, don't see anybody. Interesting. Residential is usually how people start out, but I've had a post-licensing student before, and she was a 25-year-old college graduate, and she jumped right into commercial right off the bat. Didn't even ever do residential first, like most people do. So commercial, you can, with that license you get after this process we're about to engage in, you take this class, you pass this class exam. You take the PSI exam, you pass it. Now you're a provisional inactive broker. You pick a firm, and that firm is either a commercial firm or maybe it's a firm that has a good commercial section in it, because that's maybe what you want to do. You can be a provisional broker getting into commercial real estate as long as you have good guidance for it. The commission says you better have a broker in charge with commercial experience or experience in whichever part of the business you want to do. That broker in charge shouldn't only have residential experience, but have a commercial broker under them. Commission wouldn't like that. So you can do commercial stuff. You can do residential real estate, property management. The broker license that you have will let you do property management, but You can't be a provisional broker. You got to be non-provisional, but it's still the same broker's license. It's just what status you are. Get rid of that provisional status, then you can do property management. Auctioning, if you want to be an auctioneer, like you sell real estate using the auction, then you need a real estate license to do that. You also need an auctioneer's license, by the way. You can't just start doing auctioning just because you have a real estate broker's license. Got to get an auctioneer's license. That's a whole separate entity that you would take that material from and get the qualifications from. Tenant representation means you're helping a renter, right? You're helping a renter find a place to rent. And as a newer agent, you might run into this a little more often. Frankly, it's not like HGTV in California. Those people hooking people up with a rental, they might make $2 or $3 or $4 grand, but we don't do that here. It might be $200-300, might be 1% of the first month's rent. It's not something that's going to make you rich because of that income of the placement of the tenant when they sign the lease, but that might be a person that becomes a buyer someday. And if you take good care of them, even though you're not making much money from them in this moment, that long-term relationship could be beneficial. They could be a buyer themselves someday. They could tell you about family and refer you to others, and that could turn into actual sales, listings and sales. So it's still valid. I think looking at this business as a sales business is kind of a mistake. Yes, that's what we do. We sell things. But what do we sell? Do we sell houses? Not really. What do we sell to have longevity in this business? We sell ourselves as the go-to person for people in their lives. When they think they need help with real estate, they should think of you. That's what you're selling. You as an expert. Yes, you're helping them with real estate, but the sales part should be they're feeling confident and comfortable that you're the best person for the job. Any guesses how many active licensed brokers there are in North Carolina right now? People with active real estate licenses across the state? Tell me in the chat. Across the whole state, North Carolina, you are all low. Times it by 10. Keep going. Now try again. I think Samantha had a stroke. 40. Okay. You're halfway there. 82,000 human licenses. But do we care? No. Because they're not doing real estate. A vast majority of them are not doing anything with that license. They just have the license. So you'll hear that number. I wanted to be the one to break it to you because I also want to tell you, don't worry about it. It doesn't matter. Most of them aren't competition. First, for one thing, it's across the whole state. All that really matters is who's in your local market. And even that total number doesn't matter. What matters is none of it. All that matters is that you make yourself available as a resource to people. I don't know if you would guess this because you don't know me yet, but I am an introvert by nature, an extrovert by necessity, right? When I'm done with this class, no offense to you, you guys are great, but I'm going to need a minute. I'm going to need some time to kind of decompress, get energized again, right? My brother's an extrovert. He thrives off of being around people. So I used to think, oh gosh, as an introvert, can I even succeed in this business? What I learned is it doesn't matter because there's going to be people who don't want to work with extroverts if they're introverts and vice versa, right? It's just, what are you good at? What do you like to do? What's your passion? That comes through and people will choose to work with you. So it doesn't really matter what's out there, how many people are out there. For one thing, most of them aren't even selling anything. Most of them don't sell a thing. But what can we do? Any of these things with that broker's license. It just depends on Do you have the education for it? Do you have the specialty education? So there's different license categories. You start out with that provisional broker's license. That becomes a non-provisional broker's license if you take some education. What is the education that you just learned an hour ago that gets you from provisional to non-provisional status? What is it that gets you removing that provisional status? Yes, that's right. Post-licensing classes. How many of them? 3 of them. How many hours? There it is. 90 hours total, 30 hours each. You got it. Great. And by the way, those are really just deep dives into what you're learning in this class. We just go really in depth on they're called post 301, 302, and 303. You can take them in any order. Doesn't matter. Post 301 is all about the agency relationship, how we work with clients, how we are required to take good care of them and give them fiduciary responsibility for them, obedience, loyalty, disclosure, reasonable skill and care, confidentiality, accounting. We'll get to all that in chapter 7 and 8. And then also, 302 is about contracts and closings. That is just what it sounds like. We cover contracts and closings in this class, but in 302, we read the entire standard contract line for line. I try to do it in a more fun, interesting way. And we talk about the closing procedure and the math involved. So it's all the same stuff. We just deep dive in it. And 303 is kind of a conglomeration of commercial and property management and some case studies of disciplinary action and blah, blah, blah. So that's getting your provisional status removed. And how much time do you have to get rid of that provisional status? How long do you have to take those 3 courses and complete them? There it is. 18 months. You guys are sharp. That's pretty good for 9:04 p.m. 18 months to finish those 3 classes. And once you do, there are exams. There's an exam at the end of each class, but it's not like this exam. It's not like got to pass the exam to get the license. The commission doesn't want you back out of the business. You just got the license. They don't want to take it back away from you. So it's a lot less of an atmosphere of just sort of, oh, I got to pass this thing. It's more of conversational. We have more time for discussion in those classes. It's a whole different kind of animal. So look forward to that. And now once you've taken those, you're a non-provisional or a full broker. Here's another thing to write down in your notes. On the test, maybe the final of the class, maybe the PSI, maybe both, when they're talking about a non-provisional broker, they might very well just use the word broker by itself. And it can be a problem because you might be tired. It might be hour number 3. And you're exhausted and you're emotionally drained and you're just reading test questions, trying to get them handled. And you read broker, and for some reason in your brain, you think about provisional brokers and you answer the question thinking that person is a provisional broker and they're really a non-provisional. So just be careful. Anytime they mention a broker, take a moment, take a breath, read that test question and think to yourself, okay, wait a minute. Is it a provisional one or is it a non-provisional one? Because they might call it non-provisional, they might call it full broker, but they quite likely will leave out both of those words. And if the only word they say is broker, then it's not a provisional broker. If it is, the word provisional will be in there. All right, so you have a bunch of 82,000 provisional and non-provisional brokers running around out there, some doing real estate, some not. Can they just do all of this on their own, or do they need some guidance? They need a broker in charge. That's what that person is. There is a broker in charge of the other brokers called a BIC, broker in charge. And to be a BIC, to be a broker in charge, you have to have some some experience. Well, both. You need to have experience. You need to have at least 2 years of full-time real estate experience to be eligible to be a broker in charge. 2 years full-time. What if you're not full-time? That's okay. We welcome part-time people in this business, in this industry. It's okay to be part-time, and it's probably smart to be part-time in the beginning, because why give up a solid income while you're getting your feet on the ground with real estate? Don't quit your job. Don't go out on full 100% faith unless you have a safety net to pay those bills. It's not worth it. So if you're part-time in the business, you need to have 4 years of part-time experience or 2 years full-time in order to qualify to become a broker in charge. So you got to have that experience. Once you have that experience, you need to take a class, a course called the 12-hour Broker in Charge course. The 12-hour Broker in Charge course. We don't give it. Go School doesn't give it. No school gives it. The only place you can take that 12-hour Broker in Charge course is directly from the Real Estate Commission. They reserve the right to offer it by themselves. There's another one that they offer that no one else can offer, and it's the Trust Account course. The course on how to manage other people's money and take care of that earnest money deposit in a trust account. But this Broker in Charge course is a 12-hour course. You can take it online. It only costs like $110, I think. And there's a couple dates that you need to know about this course. If you take the course first, if you just take the course, the 12-hour course, then you have an entire year after completing that course to declare yourself as broker in charge. And if you don't want to declare yourself as a broker in charge, you could just declare yourself as eligible to be one. That's what that last thing means. BIC eligible. BIC eligible just means I could be a broker in charge at any moment. All I got to do is fill out an online form with the Real Estate Commission, and then boom, I'm a BIC. So it's nice to be BIC eligible. You don't ever have to become BIC. You could just have that eligibility capability in your pocket in case you need it. When might you need it? When would it be useful to be a BIC eligible person? Well, maybe your broker in charge gets particularly busy some year and loses track of the time and forgets to do the required continuing education. If that happens, their license is going to go inactive for some amount of time. And the thing about a broker in charge who goes inactive with their license, all the provisional brokers under them go inactive too. What happens then? The minute that license goes inactive, you got to shut it down. You got to stop doing real estate. Not fun. Well, there would be a window of opportunity in a situation like that, because here's another thing to write down. I mentioned continuing education. We are required every year, all brokers, to complete two classes, 4 hours each, of continuing education. A total of 8 hours of CE is required every year. Got to have 8 hours of CE in the form of 2 4-hour classes. One of those classes can be an elective of your choice. Anything, any topic, there's all kinds of electives available. The other class is required by the Real Estate Commission. It's written by the commission, and it changes every year. It's that year's update course, a 4-hour general update course. And it's about whatever the commission decides they want us to know about. This year's course has an entire section. Out of all 5 sections, the first section is about material facts. Because I told you a couple years ago, the stat was 47% of disciplinary action was material fact related. So they realized we need to tell those people how to not screw up material fact disclosure. Agents are bad at telling the whole world that the roof is leaking. They're not disclosing material facts properly, so it shows up as a section in the continuing education class. So that update course, it's called a general update for all provisional and non-provisional brokers. If you're a broker in charge or BIC eligible, you have to take a different version of that update. It's called a BIC update course, a BIC up. But it's pretty much the same stuff. The only difference is about 20 minutes worth of BIC related material is replaced, swapped out. They shorten the rest of the course and add 20 minutes of BIC related stuff to it. So I teach CE and I teach them both, and that's about it. So once you become broker in charge or BIC eligible, you just need to take the BIC up instead of the Gen Up. Regardless of what you're taking, when is the CE due every year? That continuing education, those courses are due, write this one down, on June 10th. June 10th. CE is due for every broker every year on June 10th. I think I mentioned that the renewal fee is $45. Write that one down too. We got to pay a renewal fee of $45 to renew our licenses, and that's due on June 30th. June 30th for the money, June 10th for the education. June 30th, it's because the license year every year for the real estate licenses essentially begins on July 1st. July 1st is the sort of the start of the new license year. So like any bill, you can pay it all the way up till the last possible day, and that would be June 30th. But for the education, it's a little different. You got to get that CE done by June 10th, because think about it. You take the CE, the school that you took it from reports it, the fact that you completed it, to the real estate commission, and they need a little bit of time to report all those last minute takers of CE. Guess what? Brokers, real estate agents procrastinate like everybody else, probably more so. And over the last 26 years, I may or may not have, but definitely at least once, taken my CE on June 10th. I don't recommend it. It hasn't been any time recently, but it happens. So if you forget to take your CE by June 10th, what happens on June 11th? Is your license inactive yet? No, it's not. Is it going to become inactive at some point? Absolutely. No way to avoid it. When will it become inactive? If you miss your CE by June 10th, tell me in the chat. You guys are good. I'm excited for this class. You're looking sharp. So from June 11th through the 30th, we're not allowed to offer the courses. I would love to. I could probably charge 10 times the amount. I'm just kidding. That wouldn't be nice. But for schools would love it. But the commission says not allowed. No school can offer CE between June 11th and June 30th. So if the CE is due by June 10th, and once June 10th passes and you forgot your CE by then, you know your license becomes inactive on July 1st. Do you think the CE classes in the month of July have a different kind of atmosphere about them? Probably got a little more desperation in the room. People who are just like in a hurry. Let's get this over with so I can get my license activated again, please. So yeah, not cool. But here's the other thing. If it's a broker in charge who forgets the June 10th, then on June 11th, they're still active. And so are all those provisional brokers that they have under them, but they know it's going to go bad on July 1st. If they have a non-provisional broker in the firm that happens to be BIC eligible, they can say, hey, non-provisional broker who's BIC eligible, I need a favor. I don't want to mess this thing up for all of because there could be 200 provisional brokers in that firm. There are firms with that many provisional brokers, all of whom the broker in charge is directly responsible for. So that BIC could say to that BIC eligible person, would you take over for me by July 1st so that I can go clean up my mess and get my license back and my BIC eligibility back? Because I messed up. I forgot to do my CE. And so all they got to do is go to the Real Estate Commission website, fill out an online form and say, now that person is the new BIC, not me anymore. And now all those provisional brokers are safe. They're not going to go inactive on July 1st. Now the only one that's going to go inactive is that BIC, former BIC, I should say. It gets kind of uglier too for that BIC who's no longer a BIC. Maybe they find a school that teaches the CE that they need that first week of July, But once they take that class and get reactivated, they've still lost their BIC status. They've got to take that 12-hour course again to regain the BIC status. They got their license reactivated. They could go sell a house, but they can't be a BIC until they retake the 12-hour course. So it might take a minute, might take a little while for them to get back in action. And so maybe by August, they finally get all that stuff done and they go back to that BIC that they turned it over to and say, okay, I'm done. I'm ready to be reinstated. Let's flip it back over to me. Make me the BIC now, and you can go back to your BIC eligible status. So that's why the BIC eligible thing exists, so that you can, and it might not be that you forgot your CE. It might be that broker in charge just needs to take a break, take a vacation. Maybe they want to spend some time listing and selling property, not being a BIC anymore. Maybe just go out and sell houses again and not manage people. And so they turn it over to another person. So it's good for every firm probably to have some BIC eligible brokers within it, just to kind of handle those moments. So that's what these 4 things mean. A provisional broker, that's a temporary status. Only good for 18 months from the time you get your broker's license from the commission, not from the time you activate it, because there can be inactive provisional brokers taking a post-licensing course. And let's see, once that status is removed, you are a full broker. There's those 3 post classes, any order, 301, 302, 303, within 18 months. What if you take longer than 18 months to do your post? What happens to your status at that point? You become this guy. You are now an inactive broker. Need to reactivate by taking some more education. The thing about a provisional broker is you guys, while you're in that provisional status, you've got to pretty much be really closely supervised by your broker in charge. That BIC needs to take your business very seriously, because if you screw up, that BIC could also be in trouble with the real estate commission. You would both possibly be called before the commission and have to answer for it. That broker in charge is responsible much more heavily for a provisional than they are for a non-provisional. Non-provisionals pretty much can just go run and gun and do whatever they want for the most part, long as they're obeying the rules and the laws and not messing up with any advertising requirements, doing that improperly. But a provisional has to be really close with the BIC, because that BIC is accountable for that provisional broker. And a provisional cannot act independently. They can't start their own firm. They've got to be supervised by a broker in charge. Non-provisional broker, you've taken your 3 classes. Now you can act independently. You could start your own firm. You are held individually accountable for your actions now. But for the most part, you're still going to need a broker in charge. You're going to need a broker in charge if the following 3 things are true. Even if you're non-provisional, you need a BIC if you have brokers working under you, for you, like not employees, but like a team, and you have brokers under you. Then you're going to need a BIC, or you're going to need to start a firm and be the BIC. But you at least need to work at a firm that has a BIC over you if you have brokers under you. Also, if you choose to have a trust account of your own, then you need a BIC. And then also, if you do any sort of promotion, anything, you need a BIC. Tell me in the chat, what sorts of activities would be promotion, advertising or promotion? What am I talking about? There you go. Radio ads. Some old school, yeah, TV ads, benches, bus benches, signs, newspaper ads, billboards. There's another one I'm thinking of that I didn't think of right away. Facebook, social media stuff. What is also considered promotion or marketing? that every self-respecting salesperson carries around with them. It probably doesn't do much good. They probably get more benefit by having it so they can throw it in the goldfish bowl to maybe win a free lunch, right? But yeah, business cards. Even if you print up business cards, you have to have a broker in charge. You're doing promotion. So yeah, they likely will still need a broker in charge, and we'll talk about some more of that later. That broker in charge supervises everybody. They supervise the provisional brokers more closely than the rest. However, they are also still responsible for non-provisionals. They're responsible for them making sure that the advertising is done right. Advertising homes for sale can get brokers in trouble. There's a couple of main issues, main problems that brokers mess up with when it comes to running ads. For one thing, it's easier than ever to run something that's an ad. Used to be it was only you'd have to pay like $300 to run it in the newspaper or print ads or something. But now, obviously, with social media and this thing, you can run an ad while you're sitting there eating dinner or standing in line at Walmart. You can post something on Facebook or Instagram real quick. But if you do it wrong, don't include the proper information, you could get in trouble. And so the broker in charge is the one who is responsible for making sure all these ads by everybody, full brokers, non-provisional and provisional, are done properly. And also, if the firm is going to have a trust account, it is that broker in charge, brokers in charge. I forgot how you make that possessive. It's the responsibility of the broker in charge for managing that trust account, making sure it's accurate, making sure it's done right. They could delegate it to an office manager, but they're still the one who gets in trouble if they screw it up. They better make sure they check behind the person they delegated it to. So we talked about the requirement for experience, 2 years full-time, 4 years part-time to be BIC or BIC eligible, and they got to take that 12-hour course. Let's go back to the advertising. What are the two most frequent problems with advertising? Number one, fair housing violations. Making it sound like they're only willing to sell that property to somebody in a protected class or somebody not in a protected, everybody but this category. What do I mean by fair housing categories? The federal fair housing categories are race, religion, color, national origin, familial status, disability, race, color, religion, national origin, disability, and I'm missing one. Race, color, religion. Oh, sex, which includes gender orientation, sexual orientation, and gender identity. All of those things. You can't deny somebody real estate for them being in those categories. And what happens in these ads is not necessarily that somebody's being malicious and being a big kind of prejudiced, bigoted jerk, but that they are trying too hard to describe the property and they're using people instead of the property. What do I mean? In Charlotte, there's the Jewish Community Center downtown, or I guess uptown. And so if you had a little bungalow listing within walking distance of the Jewish Community Center, and that's how you described it in the ad, that would be a violation because you mentioned a religion. And the implication would be, oh, this is perfect for Jewish people. No, if you're not Jewish, don't even try. No, that's the thing you're trying to avoid, right? So, and by the way, mentioning the YMCA could be a problem that gets you in trouble because what does that stand for? The Young Men's Christian Association. So you just have to be super careful. The good rule of thumb that a good broker in charge will train you with, they'll say, describe the property, not the people. Describe the property itself, not the people you think might want to buy it, right? That'll keep you probably out of trouble when it comes to fair housing categories. Oh, another one is the familial status one. What does that mean? What do you think I mean by familial status as a protected class? Can't discriminate against people based on the familial status. That's a great guess. It's not right, but that's a good guess. And I appreciate that. I would have guessed it too. But it's not whether you're married or not. What else might apply to family? There it is. That's it. Are there any kids? Right? What if a rental property, the person advertises perfect for a single occupant? Wait a minute. You mean just one person? So nobody with kids is allowed? You just violated familial status. See how it can just kind of pop up? The MLS, by the way, has these robots, I call them, algorithms that scan the verbiage that you use in the remarks, and they will ding you. If you have certain words that pop up that look like it could be a fair housing violation, sometimes it turns out it's a word that has multiple meanings and it's not really a violation, and it gets all worked out. But that's how serious this stuff is. And we need it to be, because we don't. What's the downside? The downside is you actually do end up causing a person in a fair housing category to not have access to real estate fairly as for everybody. It needs to be fairly applied. So it is that BIC's job to make sure the advertising doesn't violate fair housing categories. And that includes both for provisional and non-provisional brokers. A good BIC will probably have a policy and procedure about ads, and they'll maybe make you go through training and say, here's how we do it. Or they might even take it a step further and say, don't run any ads or social media or otherwise without running them by me first. They might be very much a control freak because the consequences are pretty serious. Another way agents can screw up ads, and I'm watching the time, we got 2 minutes. Another way to screw up ads is to run something called a blind ad. A blind ad means we're not telling the world that we are a broker. Oh, you're right. I have no doubt, Angel. You betcha. Investors really screw this stuff up. As brokers, I can tell you this firsthand. The way to make the phone ring is to make people think that you are the owner, because I've run ads as the owner, the legit owner of the property for my own property, and the phone rings way more frequently than when they see that it's a listed property. People want to talk to the owner more than they want to talk to a broker. So the best way to get the phone to ring is to word the ad so that people don't realize that it is a listing, but that's not allowed. So that's the thing a BIC needs to check for too. Is this a blind ad? Are you deceiving anybody? Are you saying 3-bedroom, 2-bath bungalow in Uptown Charlotte? Call Bob 555-5555. Blind ad if Bob's the listing broker. Should say call Bob at ABC Realty and then the phone number. And then one step more for provisional brokers, you got to also include the firm's phone number as well as your own. I mean, your own, whether you want to or not, you should, but definitely the firm number as well. So you got to admit you're a broker in those ads too. Okay, we're good for tonight. Put your name in the chat for me. I appreciate your attention. Name in the chat. I'll see you tomorrow night. And yeah, work on, don't forget, let me show you this real quick. Here's what it looks like when you open up your class marker. Oh shoot, I just got rid of it. That was great. Here we go. He showed it to you. But you're probably going to need to scroll all the way down to the bottom. Every time I've ever seen it, it's the last one. It's this one. And so you'll just click start, and that's how you will go through and complete your relink and syllabus quiz. Now, to prepare for that, I would just spend a little bit of time looking through that syllabus, the first little section of it. Here we go. So before you take that little quiz, just look through the first section. It's going to be about talking about the levels, level 1, 2, and 3. And it also shows you the hours for each category, stuff like that. In the Relink book, again, these quizzes don't count towards your grade. It's just sort of a, did you do it or not? And you have to have taken it in order to be able to sit for the final. So it could really be an open book quiz if you want to do it that way. for tomorrow, we're going to continue on this license law commission rules comments stuff. We might get to chapter 1 in the textbook and in the syllabus, but probably license. Yeah, I'd go ahead and be ready for chapters 1 and 2 and the license law and commission rules. And I'll see you then. Have a good evening. Have a good day. You're welcome.